The morning fog hung thick over the abandoned warehouse district as Captain Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his scope for the 100th time. 3 days had passed since the hostage situation began, and the city's most elite marksmen had failed repeatedly to end the crisis. The target seemed impossible to hit, protected by concrete pillars and moving with unpredictable patterns that defied every tactical manual. Rodriguez wiped sweat from his brow despite the cool morning air. He had 23 confirmed kills in his military career and held the departmental record for accuracy. Yet here he was, watching his reputation crumble with each missed shot. The hostage-taker, a former military explosives expert named Viktor Petrov, had barricaded himself in the warehouse's upper level with 3 innocent civilians. Detective Sarah Chun climbed the stairs to the sniper's nest where Rodriguez had positioned himself. Her face showed the strain of coordinating the failed rescue attempts. The media had gathered like vultures below, and City Hall was breathing down their necks for results. Every hour that passed meant more danger for the hostages and more embarrassment for the department. Any movement? Chen asked quietly, settling beside the frustrated marksman. Through the scope, they could see shadows moving behind reinforced windows. Petrov had strategically positioned mirrors and decoy silhouettes, making it nearly impossible to distinguish his actual location from the false targets he had created. Rodriguez shook his head grimly. Yesterday, Sergeant Michael Torres, their second-best sniper, had taken the shot he was certain would end everything. The bullet struck what appeared to be Petrov's shoulder, but turned out to be a mannequin dressed in military fatigues. The real target had used that moment to move the hostages to an even more secure position deeper in the building. The failure stung especially hard because Torres had been Rodriguez's mentor. The older man had taught him everything about reading wind patterns, compensating for distance, and controlling breathing during high-pressure situations. If Torres couldn't make the shot, what hope did any of them have? Lieutenant Jake Morrison, the third member of their elite sniper team, had attempted his shot at dawn. His bullet shattered a window, sending glass cascading down to the street below, but Petrov remained untouched. The hostage-taker had even taunted them over the radio, describing how their bullet holes formed a pattern on the wall behind where he used to stand. The 3 marksmen represented decades of combined experience and training. Rodriguez had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. Torres had been a Marine Corps instructor, teaching the next generation of military snipers. Morrison had competed in international shooting competitions, his precision legendary among law enforcement circles. Yet none of their skills seemed to matter against Petrov's defensive strategy. The former soldier had chosen his position with the expertise of someone who understood exactly how snipers operated. Every angle they could achieve was either blocked by concrete barriers or offered only glimpses of movement that disappeared before a proper shot could be aligned. Dr. Amanda Foster, the department's criminal psychologist, had analyzed Petrov's background extensively. He had been discharged from the military after a psychological evaluation raised concerns about his mental stability. His expertise in explosives and defensive tactics made him particularly dangerous. She warned that traditional siege tactics might not work against someone with his training and mindset. The hostages included Elena Vasquez, a 28-year-old architect who had been working late in her nearby office when Petrov grabbed her from the parking lot. James Wright, a security guard making his final rounds, had tried to help Elena and became the second victim. The third hostage was Timothy Chun, Detective Chin's younger brother, who had been delivering food to the late working architect when everything went wrong. Personal stakes had raised the tension exponentially. Detective Chin struggled to maintain professional objectivity while her brother's life hung in the balance. The department couldn't afford to wait much longer, but every failed shot seemed to make Petrov more confident and dangerous. He had already demonstrated his explosive skills by rigging several false entry points with deadly traps. Captain Williams, the operation commander, gathered his team for an emergency briefing. The mayor had called twice in the past hour, and the FBI was threatening to take over if local law enforcement couldn't produce results. The pressure was suffocating, but Williams knew his people were the best chance those hostages had. "We need something different," Williams announced to the assembled officers. "Traditional approaches aren't working. This guy knows how we think, how we operate. He's been trained by the same people who trained us." His words hung heavy in the air as the team contemplated their limited options. Rodriguez studied the building plans spread across the table. Every angle had been calculated, every sight line measured and tested. Petrov had positioned himself in what amounted to a perfect defensive position. The concrete pillars provided cover from multiple directions, while the building's industrial design limited their potential shooting positions. The sound of Detective Chin's radio crackled to life. Petrov's voice came through clearly, mocking their efforts. "3 of your best shooters," he laughed. "Is this really what the city's finest has to offer? Perhaps you should consider a different approach before someone gets hurt." The threat was clear, and time was running out. As afternoon approached, Rodriguez realized they needed help from someone who thought differently, someone who might see angles and possibilities that traditional training had taught them to overlook. The question was whether such a person existed, and if they could be found before Petrov decided to make good on his threats. The failed shots had shaken the confidence of every marksman in the department. What had seemed like a straightforward, if challenging, rescue operation had become a nightmare scenario. Petrov remained untouchable while innocent lives hung in the balance. And the city's elite sharpshooters faced the humbling reality that their best efforts might not be enough. Detective Chun stared at the warehouse through binoculars, watching for any sign of her brother. The shadows moved occasionally behind the reinforced windows, but whether they represented hostages or more of Petrov's decoys remained impossible to determine. Hope was fading with each passing hour, and desperate times would soon call for desperate measures. Officer Becca Martinez had been watching the failed rescue attempts from the crowd control perimeter, her frustration growing with each missed shot. At 29, she was considered an outsider by the male-dominated tactical units, despite her exceptional marksmanship scores at the academy. Her colleagues knew her as the quiet officer who preferred working alone and had an unusual approach to problem-solving. Martinez had earned the unofficial nickname Eliminator during her rookie year after successfully ending 3 separate armed standoffs with single, perfectly placed shots. Unlike the precision shots favored by traditional snipers, her technique involved unconventional angles and creative solutions that often surprised both criminals and fellow officers. However, her methods were sometimes questioned by supervisors who preferred textbook approaches. Growing up in the city's roughest neighborhood, Martinez had learned to think differently about survival and strategy. Her father, a retired construction worker, had taught her to see buildings not as solid structures, but as collections of angles, supports, and potential weaknesses. This perspective had served her well during her brief military service, where she had specialized in urban warfare tactics. Captain Williams noticed Martinez studying the warehouse with unusual intensity. While other officers focused on the obvious sniper positions, she seemed to be examining structural details that others ignored. Her notebook contained sketches of the building from multiple perspectives, with detailed annotations about sight lines that hadn't been considered by the tactical team. "Martinez," Williams called out, approaching her position. "You've been studying this building for hours. What are you seeing that we're missing?" His tone carried a mixture of desperation and genuine curiosity. The department had exhausted conventional options, and Williams was open to any fresh perspective that might save the hostages. Martinez looked up from her sketches, hesitating briefly before speaking. "Sir, with respect to the sniper team, they're thinking like military marksmen. Clean shots, perfect angles, maximum distance for safety. But Petrov knows that playbook. He's defending against exactly the kind of shots they're trained to make." She pointed to her detailed drawings of the warehouse structure. "This building has characteristics that could be used differently. The support columns aren't just obstacles. They could be advantages if approached from an unconventional direction. There's a sight line that nobody has considered because it requires a different kind of shot." Williams studied her sketches with growing interest. Martinez had identified a position that would require shooting through a narrow gap between 2 support beams, at an angle that seemed almost impossible to achieve accurately. Traditional sniper doctrine would dismiss such a shot as too risky and impractical. "The angle you're suggesting would require shooting around corners, essentially," Williams observed. "Even if it's theoretically possible, the precision needed would be extraordinary. One miscalculation could hit a hostage instead of the target." Martinez nodded seriously. That's exactly why Petrov isn't defending against it. He knows no trained sniper would attempt such a shot. But I've been studying his movement patterns, and there's a 3-second window every 12 minutes when he checks the rear approaches. During that window, he's vulnerable from this angle. Detective Chun joined the conversation, having overheard Martinez's analysis. The personal stakes made her willing to consider options that might otherwise seem too dangerous. Rebecca, you're talking about a shot that would be difficult even under ideal conditions. With hostages in the vicinity, the margin for error is practically non-existent. I understand the risks, Martinez replied quietly. But conventional approaches have failed for 3 days. Every hour we wait increases the danger for the hostages. Sometimes the impossible shot is the only shot available. Her confidence wasn't born from arrogance, but from careful analysis and preparation. Martinez had spent her off-duty hours studying ballistics texts and practicing with different ammunition types. Her personal weapon was customized with modifications that enhanced accuracy for close-quarters urban environments rather than long-range military applications. Captain Williams called for an emergency consultation with the sniper team leaders. Rodriguez, Torres, and Morrison gathered around Martinez's sketches, initially skeptical of suggestions from someone they considered unqualified for tactical operations. However, her detailed analysis and technical knowledge gradually earned their attention. The physics work, Torres admitted grudgingly after studying her calculations. But executing this shot would require perfect timing, precise positioning, and a level of improvisation that goes against everything we've been taught about sniper protocols. Morrison examined the proposed shooting position more carefully. Even if the angle is possible, you'd need specialized ammunition designed for ricocheting shots. Standard bullets would either fragment or deflect unpredictably. The liability issues alone make this approach questionable. Martinez had anticipated these objections. From her equipment bag, she produced custom-made ammunition that she had acquired through specialized suppliers. The bullets were designed for controlled deflection shots, with weight distribution that allowed for predictable trajectory changes when striking certain surfaces. I've tested these extensively, she explained. The ballistic characteristics are completely different from standard rounds. When fired at the correct angle against reinforced concrete, they deflect in a mathematically predictable pattern. It's not a ricochet, it's a calculated trajectory change. Rodriguez studied one of the custom bullets with professional interest. Where did you learn about ammunition like this? This isn't standard issue equipment, and it's not covered in any training manual I've seen. My grandfather was a ballistics specialist during World War II, Martinez explained. He taught me about unconventional ammunition applications before he died. These techniques were developed for urban combat situations where traditional shooting methods weren't effective. The revelation added credibility to her proposal, but also highlighted the experimental nature of what she was suggesting. Captain Williams faced a difficult decision. Authorize an untested technique performed by an officer with no official sniper certification, or continue with conventional methods that had already proven ineffective. Dr. Foster joined the discussion, having monitored Petrov's psychological state throughout the standoff. His behavior patterns suggest increasing instability, she reported. Radio communications have become more erratic, and he's showing signs of paranoia about the failed rescue attempts. We may not have much more time before he decides to harm the hostages. The psychological pressure on Detective Chun was becoming unbearable. Her brother's life hung in the balance while the team debated tactics and protocols. Rebecca, she said quietly, if you think you can make this shot, I'm willing to support the attempt. We can't afford to wait any longer. Martinez understood the weight of responsibility being placed on her shoulders. Success would save 3 innocent lives, but failure could result in tragedy and the end of her law enforcement career. The shot she was proposing had never been attempted under actual combat conditions, making it as much a leap of faith as a tactical decision. Give me 2 hours to set up and confirm the timing patterns, Martinez requested. If the window doesn't present itself as calculated, I won't take the shot. But if conditions align as predicted, I believe this approach offers our best chance of ending this safely. Captain Williams looked around at his team, seeing a mixture of skepticism and desperate hope. Traditional methods had failed completely, and time was running out for the hostages. The decision to trust an unconventional approach from an unlikely source would either save lives or create an even worse disaster. The abandoned office building across from the warehouse had been cleared of civilians hours earlier, but Martinez needed access to a specific floor that offered the unusual angle she had calculated. The building's structural damage from a recent earthquake had created an opening that traditional snipers had dismissed as too unstable and dangerous for positioning equipment. Martinez carefully climbed through debris to reach her chosen position, testing each step for stability. The floor had partially collapsed, creating an irregular slope that would require her to maintain an awkward shooting stance. Unlike the comfortable, supported positions preferred by conventional snipers, she would need to adapt to uncomfortable conditions while maintaining perfect accuracy. Technical specialist Danny Kim accompanied Martinez to assist with equipment setup and verify her calculations. Kim had initially been skeptical of her approach, but her detailed ballistics mathematics had impressed him. Together, they measured distances, calculated angles, and confirmed the trajectory path that would allow a bullet to deflect off the concrete support beam and strike the target. The margin for error is approximately 1.5 inches, Kim calculated, adjusting his measuring equipment. At this distance, with the deflection angle required, even a slight miscalculation could send the bullet in completely the wrong direction. The concrete beam needs to be struck at exactly the right point for the deflection to work as planned. Martinez nodded, understanding the precision required. She had practiced similar shots at a private range, but never under live conditions with innocent lives at stake. Her custom rifle had been modified with a specialized scope that could calculate deflection angles, technology that was experimental and not yet approved for official use. Detective Chun remained in radio contact, providing updates on Petrov's movements and behavior patterns. The hostage-taker had become increasingly paranoid, moving between positions more frequently and making threats about teaching the incompetent police a lesson. Time pressure was mounting as his mental state appeared to deteriorate. He's becoming more unpredictable, Chun reported. The psychological profile suggests he might harm the hostages just to prove his superiority over our tactical team. If you're going to attempt this shot, it needs to happen soon. Martinez had identified a 12-minute pattern in Petrov's movements, but she needed to observe several cycles to confirm the timing was consistent. Through her scope, she watched as he checked various defensive positions, looking for approaching officers. During his rear position check, he would be vulnerable for approximately 3 seconds, barely enough time to align and fire the shot. Captain Williams maintained command of the overall operation while giving Martinez the freedom to execute her plan. The decision had been controversial, with several senior officers expressing concerns about allowing an unproven technique. However, the complete failure of conventional methods had left few alternatives. All units maintain current positions, Williams commanded over the radio. Do not attempt any approach that might disrupt the timing patterns Martinez has observed. This is our best chance to end this situation safely. Rodriguez and Torres had positioned themselves as backup support, ready to take follow-up shots if Martinez's attempt failed or only wounded the target. Their skepticism had gradually changed to professional respect as they observed her methodical preparation and technical knowledge. However, they remained concerned about the unprecedented nature of what she was attempting. In 20 years of tactical operations, I've never seen anything like this attempted, Torres commented quietly. If it works, it will revolutionize how we think about urban sniper situations. If it fails, he didn't need to complete the sentence. Martinez tested her equipment one final time, ensuring that her customized rifle was perfectly zeroed for the unusual shot. The specialized ammunition had been loaded with extreme care, as any imperfection could cause the bullet to fragment upon impact with the concrete rather than deflecting cleanly toward the target. Dr. Foster continued monitoring Petrov's psychological state through intercepted radio communications and behavioral observation. His paranoia is increasing, she reported. He's starting to question whether the hostages are more valuable as shields or as examples. We may be running out of time regardless of tactical considerations. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Martinez's shoulders as she realized the entire rescue operation now depended on her ability to execute a shot that existed more in theory than proven practice. The lives of 3 innocent people, including Detective Chin's brother, hung in the balance of a technique that had never been attempted under combat conditions. Kim finished his final calculations and looked up from his measuring equipment with a grave expression. "The physics are sound," he confirmed. "If you hit the concrete beam at the precise point we've marked, the bullet should deflect at the exact angle needed to strike the target. But there's no room for error. Miss by even a small amount, and the bullet could go anywhere." Martinez checked her watch, noting that the next 12-minute cycle would begin in approximately 4 minutes. She needed to be in position and ready to fire during the brief window when Petrov would be checking his rear defensive positions. The timing had been consistent for the past 2 hours, but any deviation could ruin the opportunity. "All units, prepare for the attempt," Captain Williams announced. "Medical teams stand ready for immediate response. If this works, we need to be prepared to extract the hostages quickly. If it doesn't work, we fall back to containment and negotiation." The assembled officers watched nervously as Martinez settled into her shooting position. The awkward angle required her to maintain an uncomfortable stance while keeping the rifle perfectly steady. Unlike traditional sniper positions with bipods and supports, she would need to rely entirely on her own physical strength and stability. Through her scope, Martinez could see the concrete support beam that would serve as her deflection point. The impact location had been marked with laser measurement tools, but hitting such a precise spot from this distance would require perfect execution. She controlled her breathing and heart rate, preparing mentally for the shot that would either save 3 lives or potentially cause a catastrophe. Detective Chin's voice came through the radio with increased tension. "Movement in the target area. He's beginning his position check pattern. You should have visual in approximately 90 seconds. Martinez made final adjustments to her scope and settled into firing position. The next 3 minutes would determine whether her unconventional approach would succeed where traditional methods had failed, or whether the impossible shot would remain impossible after all. Martinez controlled her breathing as she watched Petrov through the scope, tracking his movements with the methodical precision of a predator studying its prey. The 12-minute pattern had held consistent for the past 3 cycles, but she needed perfect timing for the shot to succeed. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger as she calculated wind speed and atmospheric conditions. "Target beginning rear position check," Detective Chun whispered through the radio. 30 seconds to window. The tension in her voice reflected the desperate hope that her brother would soon be free from his terrifying ordeal. 3 days of failed rescue attempts had left everyone emotionally and physically exhausted. Through her scope, Martinez could see the precise impact point on the concrete support beam where her bullet needed to strike for the deflection to work correctly. Technical specialist Kim had marked the location with mathematical precision, but executing the shot would require her to trust calculations that had never been tested under actual combat conditions. Petrov moved toward his rear checking position exactly as predicted, his paranoia about potential police approaches making him vulnerable during these brief moments. Martinez tracked his movement, calculating the exact moment when he would be positioned for the deflected bullet to strike him effectively. The window would last only 3 seconds. 10 seconds, Chen announced quietly. Martinez steadied her rifle against the unstable surface, compensating for the awkward shooting position that conventional snipers would never attempt. Her custom scope showed the deflection angle perfectly aligned, but theory and practice were often very different things in high-pressure situations. "Window opening now," Chun whispered urgently. Through her scope, Martinez could see Petrov checking his rear approaches, exactly where her calculations predicted he would be. She aligned her shot on the concrete beam, trusting her mathematics and training as she applied steady pressure to the trigger. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed through the abandoned office building. Martinez watched as her custom bullet struck the concrete support beam at precisely the calculated impact point. For a fraction of a second, she held her breath as physics and ballistics determined whether her unconventional approach would succeed or fail catastrophically. The bullet deflected exactly as predicted, changing direction at the mathematically calculated angle. Martinez tracked its path through her scope as it traveled toward Petrov's position. The former soldier had no warning of the approaching projectile, having no reason to suspect that anyone could achieve such an impossible shot. The deflected bullet struck Petrov in the center of his chest, the impact sending him backward against a concrete wall. His weapon fell from his hands as he collapsed, the shot having been instantly fatal. The 3-day siege was over in a single moment, ended by a technique that existed nowhere in official tactical manuals. Target down, Martinez announced over the radio. Hostages appear secure. The relief in her voice was audible as she watched through her scope for any movement from Petrov's position. The impossible shot had worked exactly as calculated, vindicating her unconventional approach and saving 3 innocent lives. Captain Williams immediately ordered tactical teams to move in for hostage extraction. Rodriguez and Torres, who had watched the shot through their own scopes, were stunned by what they had witnessed. In decades of combined sniper experience, neither had ever seen anything approaching the precision and creativity of Martinez's deflection shot. How the hell did that work? Torres muttered in amazement as he watched the tactical team secure the building. I've been shooting for 20 years, and I wouldn't have believed that shot was possible if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Detective Chen rushed toward the warehouse as soon as the all-clear was given, desperate to confirm her brother's safety. The 3 hostages were found traumatized but physically unharmed, having been protected by Petrov's own defensive preparations that kept them away from the area where he positioned himself. Martinez remained in her shooting position for several more minutes, ensuring that no additional threats emerged from the building. The adrenaline rush of the successful shot was tempered by the sobering reality that she had taken a human life, even though it had been necessary to save innocent victims. Technical specialist Kim was ecstatic about the success of their calculations. The bullet performed exactly as predicted, he announced excitedly. The deflection angle was perfect, and the impact energy was sufficient for immediate incapacitation. This technique could revolutionize urban tactical operations. Captain Williams approached Martinez as she finally left her shooting position, his expression showing a mixture of relief and amazement. Officer Martinez, what you accomplished today was extraordinary. A shot that our best marksman considered impossible, executed with precision that saved 3 lives. The assembled officers began to gather around Martinez, eager to understand how she had achieved something that seemed to defy conventional wisdom about sniper tactics. Her quiet confidence and methodical approach had impressed everyone who witnessed the operation, earning respect from colleagues who had previously dismissed her unconventional methods. The secret wasn't the shooting, Martinez explained modestly. It was thinking differently about the problem. Petrov defended against traditional sniper approaches because he had been trained in the same tactics. But unconventional situations sometimes require unconventional solutions. Rodriguez approached her with newfound respect, extending his hand in congratulation. Martinez, I owe you an apology. I thought your approach was too risky and unproven. But you saw possibilities that none of us considered, and your execution was flawless. Detective Chun emerged from the warehouse with her brother Timothy, both of them emotionally overwhelmed but grateful to be reunited safely. The architect Elena Vasquez and security guard James Wright were also rescued unharmed, though they would require counseling to process their traumatic experience. Thank you, Chen said simply to Martinez. You saved my brother's life when everyone else had given up hope. I'll never forget what you did today. The gratitude in her eyes reflected the deep emotional impact of the successful rescue operation. Dr. Foster examined Petrov's body to confirm the cause of death and gather information for her psychological post-operation analysis. The single bullet had struck with lethal precision, ending the standoff instantly and preventing any possibility of him harming the hostages in a final desperate act. As the scene was secured and evidence collected, Martinez reflected on the events that had led to this moment. Her unconventional background and willingness to think outside established protocols had proven crucial when traditional methods failed. The impossible shot had become possible through careful analysis, precise calculation, and flawless execution. The media outside began reporting the successful end to the 3-day siege, though details about the specific tactics used would be carefully controlled. Martinez's deflection shot would become the stuff of legend within law enforcement circles, studied and discussed by tactical experts trying to understand how such an achievement had been possible. 6 months after the warehouse incident, Officer Rebecca Martinez found herself standing before a packed auditorium at the National Police Training Academy, explaining her deflection shot technique to law enforcement professionals from across the country. The impossible shot that had saved 3 lives had revolutionized thinking about urban tactical operations, earning her recognition as an innovative force in modern policing. The department had initially struggled with how to classify Martinez's achievement. No official protocol existed for documenting a successful deflection shot, and her technique challenged fundamental assumptions about proper sniper procedures. However, the undeniable success of her method had forced tactical manuals to be rewritten and training programs to be expanded. Captain Williams had been promoted to deputy chief, partly based on his willingness to authorize unconventional tactics when traditional methods failed. His decision to trust Martinez's calculations had been vindicated by the successful rescue, but he remained amazed by the precision and courage required to execute such a shot under extreme pressure. Officer Martinez demonstrated that innovation and adaptability are just as important as traditional training, Williams explained to a room full of tactical commanders. Her success came from thinking beyond established protocols and finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Martinez had been offered positions with federal agencies and private security firms, all eager to benefit from her unique approach to marksmanship and problem-solving. However, she had chosen to remain with her original department, working to develop training programs that would teach other officers to think creatively about tactical challenges. The custom ammunition she had used for the deflection shot was now being studied by ballistics experts and manufactured by specialized suppliers for law enforcement agencies. Her grandfather's World War II techniques, combined with modern materials and precision manufacturing, had created a new category of tactical ammunition designed specifically for urban operations. Detective Chun had returned to full duty after taking time off to help her brother Timothy recover from his traumatic experience. The architect Elena Vasquez had also recovered well, eventually designing a memorial garden for the warehouse site that honored both the victims and the innovative police work that had saved lives. Rodriguez, Torres, and Morrison had all undergone additional training in unconventional shooting techniques, working with Martinez to develop programs that would prepare future marksmen for situations where traditional methods might prove inadequate. Their initial skepticism had been replaced by professional admiration and eagerness to learn new approaches. Rebecca taught us that expertise isn't just about following established procedures, Rodriguez admitted during a department training session. Sometimes the best solution comes from someone who sees the problem differently and isn't afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. Technical specialist Kim had published several papers on deflection ballistics, working with Martinez to document the mathematical principles that made her shot possible. Universities and military academies now included their work in advanced ballistics courses, studying the physics and psychology behind unconventional tactical solutions. Dr. Foster had analyzed the psychological factors that enabled Martinez to succeed where others failed, focusing on the importance of creative thinking under extreme pressure. Her research suggested that diverse perspectives and unconventional backgrounds could be crucial assets in law enforcement, challenging traditional hiring and training practices. The warehouse where the siege had taken place was eventually demolished, but not before becoming an unofficial pilgrimage site for tactical officers wanting to understand the angles and calculations that made the deflection shot possible. A small plaque was installed marking the location where innovative police work had saved innocent lives. Martinez's nickname, Eliminator, had taken on new meaning within the department. Originally earned for her ability to end dangerous situations with single shots, it now represented her talent for eliminating the limitations of conventional thinking. Younger officers sought her mentorship, eager to learn how to approach problems with similar creativity and precision. The success of the deflection shot had broader implications beyond law enforcement. Military urban warfare specialists studied Martinez's techniques, recognizing applications for situations where traditional sniper tactics were ineffective. Her approach offered new possibilities for resolving hostage situations and neutralizing threats in complex environments. Training facilities across the country began constructing specialized ranges that allowed officers to practice deflection shots under controlled conditions. Martinez worked as a consultant, helping design courses that would teach the mathematical principles and physical skills necessary for executing such technically demanding shots. The media attention surrounding the case had been carefully managed, but Martinez's story inspired articles about innovation in law enforcement and the importance of thinking beyond traditional boundaries. She became a symbol of how unconventional approaches could succeed where established methods failed. Detective Chun often visited Martinez's training sessions, bringing her brother Timothy, who had developed an interest in law enforcement partly because of his rescue experience. The young man was considering a career in police work, inspired by officers who were willing to risk everything to protect innocent people. "What Rebecca did that day changed how I think about impossible situations," Timothy explained to reporters. "She showed that there's always another way to approach a problem if you're willing to look hard enough and think differently about the solutions." Martinez remained humble about her achievement, consistently crediting teamwork and careful preparation rather than individual heroism. She emphasized that the deflection shot succeeded because of collaboration between multiple specialists, mathematical analysis, and the willingness of commanders to authorize innovative approaches. The custom rifle Martinez had used for the shot was eventually donated to the police museum, where it became one of the most popular exhibits. Visitors studied the technical modifications and specialized scope that had made the deflection shot possible, learning about the intersection of traditional marksmanship skills and modern ballistics technology. Years later, Martinez would be remembered not just for a single extraordinary shot, but for demonstrating that innovation and adaptability were essential qualities for modern law enforcement. Her legacy inspired a generation of officers to think creatively about challenges and never accept that a problem was truly impossible to solve. The warehouse siege had lasted 3 days, but its impact on tactical thinking would continue for decades. Officer Rebecca Martinez had proven that sometimes the most effective solution comes from the most unlikely source, executed with precision that transforms the impossible into the inevitable.